Yes. Yep. A recording has started. All right, so we've officially convened. We have a quorum of 13 for the CSS Workforce Board meeting. Currently in attendance for quorum is Tim Driscoll, Jeannie Eschbeck, Jamie Johnson, Chris Sharkey, Michael Mishuk, Bill Caudle, Kelly Long, Nancy Kirby-Kerjakovic, AJ Kircher, Josh Michael, Ernie Hartman, Judy McKinney-Cherry, Margaret Lawrence. We may also have additional attendees join us. So I think, Mike, you can convene the meeting, and if you want to hand off to me, you're welcome to. If you want to go through yourself, whichever you feel comfortable with.
Yeah, for the most part, I'll just turn things over to you. I can just ask for the motions if that's how it has to go from the.
Okay. All right.
First item is there a conflict of interest disclosure that anybody has?
Hi, Mr. Griffin. How are you?
Yes, Mike, this is Jeannie Eschbach. I have a conflict of interest when it comes to the ETPL list, so I will recuse myself.
Okay. Anybody else? All right, on to approval of the minutes from February 22nd, 2020. Is there a motion to approve those minutes?
This is Jamie. I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Melissa, did you get who those were?
So Jamie made the motion.
Jamie and Judy second.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. I don't know if we want to do this. I know it helped on some of the Zoom meetings I've had. If you just want to say your name when you're making the motion, that makes it clear.
Please, that would be very helpful. Thank you.
Okay. All right, so we have a motion, a second. Is there any discussion or questions on the minutes? Hearing none. Just vote all in favor by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Under the board chair report, I'll turn this over to you, Dan. I think you're on mute, Dan.
I am. I apologize. I'm so used to that when I'm having meetings with my staff. They tell me to just be quiet and sit back and let the magic happen. So I just. All right. So under the board chair report, board membership, we have added some board members and filled all of our slots. So recent additions, just as a reminder, Chris Sharkey, private sector in Steuben County, Bruce Boughton, private sector in Schuyler County, Kim Nagel, also private sector in Schuyler County. We still have one lingering opening, which is a private sector in Chemung County. We really need to get traction on this one because that person would seriously like to step away. So we are going to have to work very, very diligently on that, and I will be reaching out directly to Joe Roman and trying to see if we can close that gap. March 2020 budget. I'm going to pull it up on my screen here, maybe. And then I'm going to share my screen with everyone so that we kind of have a common talking point. Now that I say that, I think I just closed it on accident. So hold on one moment. There we are. All right, I'm going to share my screen and then try and blow it up as big as possible. So hopefully folks can see this document. As a reminder, the far left labeled PY19 approved, this column right here. This is our budget approval for the year. Our cash expenditures and our accruals give us our total accrued. Obligations are things such as signed contracts or other legally bound reasons that we have to pay those, which gives us our total accrued obligated expenditures in this column here. And then on the far right is really, in order to meet our mandated 80% expenditure goal, we've kind of broken it up and given ourselves target by line item. So looking in the personnel category, our overall budget is $870. Right now, it looks like we're on coming seriously under. But one of the things that we are, because of the way that we're required to do our accounting in the DOL world, if you look, there's no obligations for salaries here, which means we're not able to take into account, for instance, that some of the staff are going to stay till June 30th. When you actually put all of that together, I'm still very comfortable we're going to come in under our budget. We're not going to hit 48%. I think we're going to be closer to maybe like a 70, 72% expenditure goal in that category. And I may be working with executive committee to maybe consider a couple of temporary positions to kind of plan for when the centers reopen and bring in some additional skill set and bandwidth. But all in all, I'm not unhappy with personnel category. Under the operating expense category, just looking at the projected column here, over here on the side, it looks like we are way over budget on rent. This continues to, we've not actually had the time and to actually measure. So if you've been to our administrative office, there is a significant chunk of that office that is set aside as kind of a youth program area. Once we actually confirm the actual size and shape of that area, we're going to measure it out and then transfer the square footage of the rent and also the associated utilities. And then that will be transferred down to here where you see a big 0 in the one-stop expenses. So that is the preponderance of the reason that we're over in those categories. Other items of interest on that, staff travel is now going to be way down. So we are not going to, I cannot imagine we're going to exceed our travel budget. Dues and membership, this is an area we've got to do a little look. I think there are timing issues here, but with us not being able, we're not an essential business. So without Patty and I being able to be in the same space at the same time, it's hard for us to kind of dig into that a little bit. But I think there may be some things going on there. So on supplies, you see we are way over. We actually have had to invest in quite a bit of equipment on this category, and some of that needs to be moved out of that line and down into the below the 554 line and some of the one-stop expenditures. Otherwise, our goal is 159, or our budget's 159, our goal is 127. We're going to project to hit about 83% of that. So I'm pretty comfortable we're good in that category. Under one-stop expenses, they've really kind of ground to a halt. As I mentioned earlier, some of the equipment stuff will move down into here, and the space cost for the Courting Youth will be there, but there's not a lot of one-stop expenditures going on right now, other than the basic rent that we have to keep paying. Under program expenditure category, you can see how we're playing out there. Work experiences, that's for our youth team. They really, a lot of them went on hiatus. We continue to have some that of our youth that are staying in work experiences in some of the essential industries like HVAC and whatnot. And we are looking at initiating 1 or 2 more. But in this time, it's really hard to get a lot of ramp up in that category. Contracted services, it looks like we're a little high, but I believe that to be a timing issue because of the way the contract is dated. We're able to accrue and obligate the entire contract, even though it extends beyond the June 30th timeframe. So that's why that appears to be high. Training, OJT, and customize, we were really rocking and rolling on that. You can see in this column here, the 228, our business team had really been very aggressive on getting those out there and obligating funds. That has slowed dramatically. It's not ended, but it has slowed. Our top program, we're not going to likely have a second top program this year, which we're really hoping, so that may open up some things, some more monies. Supportive services, mileage reimbursement are really related to our tuition and incidentals, which is basically our ITA line. Ernie will talk a little bit about what that group has been doing, but they really got their side of the house ramped up, and we're very happy with that. And then the tape test results is our expenditures on the tapes that we did the policy for. So bottom line, if you go to the top, we're 75% of the way through the year. So the number we'd look for down here in this corner is to be around that 75 mark to show us that we're on pace, and we're at 71. So When you look at the big picture, I'm actually very comfortable. We do have some areas where we've got to move some dollars around within the categories, but all in all, I'm pretty pleased with this. I will tell you that there has been a lot of conversation from the local boards up to Albany about relaxing the 80% expenditure requirement. It's going to be very hard for areas to spend money in a time in which we can't really train people and businesses aren't doing training. So Albany has not said yay or nay on that. The feds have weighed in on it. USDOL says that the grantees, the New York State, can waive that expenditure if they want. New York has just not declared if they're going to do it or not. So anyways, that's the budget. Questions, comments? I'm happy to field as many as you'd like.
Okay, if no one has any questions, can I get a motion to approve the budget?
So moved. Tim Driscoll.
Bill Connell, move.
Nancy Kirby, second.
Okay, motion and second. Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
Carried.
So
Hey,
we're
Dan, no activity from executive committee because we haven't met operations oversight.
yeah, so Judy, do you have the materials?
Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Hello? Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yep, kind of.
Yeah, we can hear it.
No, we can't hear you, Judy. We had you before, now we lost you.
Shoot. Okay.
Gotcha.
Now you do or now you don't?
We
Now we
do.
do.
Okay. So we have, and I apologize. I had my notes right in front of me. I just pulled a Dan. Sorry about that. Dan, you and I are in the same boat today. I had them. I had my notes and now I'm looking for them. So do me a favor, go to the next item on the agenda while I find my notes. How's that? Can you do that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Dan, do you want to
So
talk
the
about the
next
ITA review?
Sure. Actually, Ernie's on. So Ernie has a Ernie. I have your report out here somewhere. So let me see if I can locate it, and then I will share my screen with folks on this, and then I'll let you talk through both what's kind of going on and also your membership changes. So I will share that momentarily. And now it's not going to want to share, is it?
Yeah, so this is kind of weird. I had it. I don't know what I did.
There we go. There you are, Ernie. Let me know when you want to scroll down a little bit. Hopefully everyone can see this. Big enough to read it.
Yeah, you've got the songbook opened up to the ITA page.
Yep.
So what we have now to date since 2019, obviously we've got 33 approved for training. That date in 2019 is as of July 1 of 2019. There were 6 incomplete. I did ask Phyllis if we had any recourse into a drag back of any funds that we expended, and she said no, that's not the policy. But I shared with her, and I feel that if these people come back to us for training, those that didn't fulfill their obligation, that should be taken into account when we interview the applicant. We have 8 completed, and the on hold 16 is just because we just can't do any training right now, because most of them are hands-on, like CDL training. anything in the construction trades. That's just not happening right now. And we are continuing on the online training. That is mostly through SUNY Adirondack, some of the colleges. It's mostly professional coding, and we do have one of those three have completed their training. And as you can read down through there, I'm sure that the only thing that I want to add in that paragraph there is the last bullet point, training updates. The state has been redirecting some of their assets to unemployment insurance because of the huge surge in UI benefit requests. So, a lot of these counselors are being redirected elsewhere. Other updates, we need to approve a revised demand occupation list today. And we're going to submit to the board for approval some additional online courses. And then you have the breakdown of training approvals and the incomplete breakdown. And just keep in mind that the incomplete breakdown is reflected in the numbers above that in the approval column. And I would like to, you know, as you look at this document here, I was wondering if the board would like to see additional information provided on this. My suggestion was in the training approval breakdown that maybe we could have a county breakdown of who is actually seeking this training. I don't know if you folks think that that would be helpful. I think I'd like to know what counties are we get the most bang for our buck with. Any thoughts? Crickets? Okay. And the only other thing is that we've talked about expanding the number of participants on the ITA. Right now, we're at 3. We're proposing to increase that to 5, and for the most part, it's just to make sure that we have quorum all the time. You know, if I'm on the road and I can't be there, at least we can still maintain a quorum. Right now, if I'm not there and somebody else can't make it, we're kind of stuck in the water. I do believe that Dan and Phyllis have gotten somebody from the state. Is that correct, Dan?
So current membership structure is Ernie representing the board is the chairperson. The state usually has the state manager. That position is vacant. So Stacy, who is the SLSR, and Elmira has agreed to fill in until the state fills the management role. On the operator side, we have a new operator. You're all going to be introduced to Dave Preet, who is replacing Dave Dre. So that's the current 3. But as you can see, when you have transition go on it, it really makes it very hard to keep and maintain quorum. So Ernie's thought was to go to 5 by adding 2 additional categories, actually expanding 1 and then adding in another category. The extra category being added was thought that it could be kind of partners at large. And at this point, we have had a volunteer step forward from ProAction, Sally Rasu. She actually has some operator experience in the past, so she's actually very well trained and knows how to do this, to step right in and be impactful. But the thought was to expand to have a partner at large representative, as well as a second board position. So this committee really is led by a board member, and as you can kind of parse through, and as I was going through that, you've got DOL operations, you've got center operations, you have partners at large. But what we're really hoping for is to have a second board person serve alongside Ernie so that if he's not there, we have a much higher degree of probability that a board slot and a board member will be there kind of as part of this decision-making process. So we don't have a volunteer for that role at this moment. We're kind of hoping that truly somebody will feel that the pangs of interest through the video camera this morning and maybe step up to the plate. But that's what Ernie and the team are looking at on the ITA review committee.
And just so you know, folks, the time commitment for this is very minimal. We meet in the busy time of the year. We meet maybe twice a month, 3 times a month if it's really we've got a lot of applicants. But it doesn't take much more than a half hour per meeting. So. And it's at the Lagonegro building, or the Corning Community College campus in Elmira is where we meet. So if you feel that you can squirrel away a little bit of time each month for the ITA, I'd appreciate it. And if you can contact Dan if you get the interest in it.
We probably should, Ernie, if you could request just a motion for the board for the record to expand the committee to the 5 members, adding in those 2 additional categories, just so we have a record of it in case we're ever called to the table.
Okay, and well, that being said, do we have a motion to expand the ITA board? Eddie?
This is Jeannie Ashback. I would make the motion to expand the board.
And I would second the motion, Tim Driscoll.
Thanks, Tim. Any questions on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks, folks.
Aye.
It's all yours, Jack.
All right. And I'm ready when you are.
Thank you, sir, and hand it off to Judy.
Yep. So I'm actually pretty proficient in Zoom. I'm not as proficient in Microsoft's software. So I'm going to try and share a screen here. Perhaps I'm going to, and I don't know if it just happened. Is it sharing or not? No.
No.
Okay.
Which document are you trying to do? Because I can probably share from here. The operations and oversight from March. Which one are you trying to do?
What I'm trying to do, I want to start with the Career Center satisfaction survey results.
Oh, I don't have that one right handy. I apologize.
Okay.
All right.
Well, what do you have?
Well, I just had the handout materials from today, so I have the operations and oversight report from the youth team in March, as well as the operations and oversight minutes from the meeting in March as well.
Okay.
Can you guys see it now? This is Jeannie. I think I shared it.
Oh, you did.
There you go.
You're welcome.
Actually, yeah. So what I wanted to share actually with the team, and actually this isn't it, but that's okay. I'm going to talk about a different one. You don't have it, but trust me, it's a really nice report. So we did the team did a customer satisfaction survey, and they were looking at sort of and I don't believe this was already given to the board, but we were looking at sort of what the results were, and we did it in each of our centers. And what was nice was that we were able to sort of see the experience, whether they were satisfied or not. And overall, there was great satisfaction. And the reason I'm bringing this up is that one of the things that we looked at in the operations committee was the recertification of the centers. And so the survey really did a nice job in terms of identifying where we've got strengths and also where we are, where we're neutral and very satisfied. Some of the ideas, the wait time, again, not bad. Purpose of the visit, we were able to capture that, whether it was computer service, whether they were printing, using the fax, meeting, or doing a workshop. And then some of the recommended additional services, and this is what I wanted to sort of share, is that they were kind of all over the board. It was interesting, a coffee pot, which is pretty funny, computer training, more friendlier greeting, which we can work on, but more workshops and assistance programs. And then also webinar lectures and internships. So I thought that that was in Elmira. Montour suggested it be quieter in class. Bath, it was, one-on-one, more one-on-one. And then Elmira, it was more staff to client ratio, and a little bit more, better morale. And so I thought that it was very helpful. And I think that for the whole board, it's important to know that this is part of what goes into when you're looking at operations and recertifications. This is part of what we're looking at. We, in the last time the board got together, we talked about how the ADA equipment is finally arriving and getting set up. We also have been working on just sort of the website, making sure that we're trying to make sure that we are on top of that. And I do want to take just a moment. The committee, we have not talked about this in committee yet, but I just want to share that I think that Dan and the team are doing just a phenomenal job at trying to sort of mitigate where they can some of the issues that have come because of COVID, in terms of his focus on sort of stabilizing operations, and then what they're doing with their business outreach. And while that's not necessarily in the operations, it definitely impacts, what we're doing. And so I just wanted to give Dan some kudos while I'm doing my report on his effort to be innovative and to be very customer oriented. So, and you have the report, so I can take questions if you'd like.
Any questions for Judy? Dan, you want a motion for acceptance of this, right?
Yeah, we should take a motion to accept the operations and oversight report, or minutes as the report. Yes.
Okay.
Please.
Could I get a motion, please?
I'll make a motion. Kelly Long.
Bill Cottle, second.
Okay, motion second. Any further questions for Judy or Dan? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much. Dan, anything on audit and I-86 you want to talk about briefly?
So audit. So all the audit dates were extended. However, we do want to close up the actual audit from last year. So Nancy and Drew are kind of our last standing audit committee, single audit committee members. We are going to, I just got a rough draft of some things. I'm going to meet with Patty and the single audit team to kind of make sure I understand it. And then we're going to convene a meeting to discuss this. I would love to have kind of spread this. This is another committee that only meets periodically and literally maybe 2-3 times a year tops. But I'd love to have some additional folks on Nancy's team to help fill that out and spread the burden of this particular task. But we are going to need that. So if there's anybody out there who has kind of a financial inclination and would be interested in serving on that, please let me know as soon as possible, because we're going to need to have a meeting here real soon. On the I-86, I think I saw Fred join. I don't know if I've got too many people on my screen here. Fred, did you join?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yep. Can you take 3 or 4 minutes to maybe bring us up to speed? I know there's been some changes and whatnot on that group.
Yeah, so we had to cancel the June 5th event for obvious reasons. We decided that, with the keynote speaker, we wanted to at least be able to alert him, 6 to 8 weeks ahead of time that we wouldn't be having the event. So we had to make that decision. Beyond that, I hope to have a draft state of the workforce report done in the next few weeks, for whatever, again, that's worth. It made an awful lot of sense until about 6 weeks ago, and now the report is kind of the exact opposite of what I expected it to be. So beyond that, just working together. Dan and I are part of the larger business response team. for the region. Just working with businesses to try and help them through this very confusing time. That's really it.
All right. I think that's it, Jack, for that subcategory.
Okay, thank you. Do we have an operator report today, Dan?
We do. So a couple of things. We have a brand shiny, spanking new operator on the team, and his name is David Preet. So I'm going to kind of let Dave introduce himself, take a couple minutes to talk about his background and share that. And then, Dave, I'll also share my screen with your operator handout, kind of the amended report. Kind of following Fred's theme here, the reports that you've seen from the operator don't really make much sense anymore. Once you close the career centers down, what are you reporting on? So we've thrown some data out there, and we are now in the process of revisioning what these future operator reports are going to look like. So Dave, the floor is yours. And then for folks that are looking at my screen, I will share my screen so you have that as well.
Thank you, Dan. And it's a pleasure to virtually meet everybody. I look forward to the day when we can meet in person, hopefully sooner rather than later. Let me just give a brief background about myself. I've spent close to 16 years working for a nonprofit organization called the Western New York Area Health Education Center, where we addressed healthcare workforce needs with healthcare providers in a 12-county region throughout Western New York. I held that position until 2016, and then more recently, I worked in long-term care for 2 of the skilled nursing facilities in Hornell, doing marketing and community outreach. And then the most recent position that I just resigned from about a month ago before I took over this position was with Care First as business development coordinator. So I do have several years experience working in workforce development, but also in relationship building, partnership building with providers, with the communities, key players in the communities. And that's a really important thing for me. And I want to emphasize that I want to have share that mindset or mentality with my staff, and how important it is to build strong relationships. So that being said, I started this position March 23rd, so actually a month ago from today, and that was kind of the start of the period of the COVID isolation, or whatever we want to call it. And starting around that time, the career counselors began working remotely and shifted the process of service delivery to virtual means, such as using what we're using now, Teams and Zoom and some other virtual tools to provide all the same core services that they were offering when the center doors were still open, such as resume development, interview prep, job searches and things like that. And you can see on my screen, Dan, if the first chart on the screen actually is a workshop summary. That was pre-COVID-19, which there were 9 workshops held before the centers closed. You can see the attendance on those. 3 of them, there were no attendees. That's something that I want to improve upon, is getting more participation. Right now it's going to be virtually because that's the only way that we can do trainings. My staff is working on developing trainings along with some of the other CSS workforce staff, including the emerging workforce and the youth programs. We're developing trainings that we can roll out to some of our customers to do during this time when, they're waiting for jobs and training opportunities to open back up. My staff actually also has been directing any callers that call in to the Skill Up website, which is actually listed right on the CSS Workforce homepage, so that they can take advantage of free training opportunities. As you can see, a lot of the incoming calls, most of the incoming calls during this COVID period to the centers have been for unemployment. Earlier on, the first couple of weeks when the centers were closed, there were just a huge number of calls for the unemployment. And with a number of calls coming into the center over the past month, the counselors were advised to direct those callers to the DOL unemployment website. The number of calls represent calls coming into Career Center phone lines that were redirected to the remote phones, the mobile phones that each of the counselors have. So due to the extreme number of calls at the beginning of the COVID-19 period, various personnel, including the DOL staff that are at the centers, aided in answering the Career Center phones. These calls also account for voicemails that were left after hours that the counselors returned the next working day. And then Bath and Montour Falls, I combined their calls because John Smith, who's actually on right now as a guest, is taking calls for both of those centers since we don't have a Bath counselor right now. We're in the process of interviewing some folks that are possible candidates. So John has been taking Montour and Bath combined. And then as you can see from the last chart on here, these are some of the numbers for the COVID period for the core services that the counselors provide. Again, there has been no ITA placements, as Ernie had mentioned earlier, but there are 6 in process. And you can take a look at that chart. Again, with the situation being what it is, there's not a lot of opportunities right now for ITAs or job placements unless it's in essential positions. But we are preparing for when the day comes and we open back up our doors to be able to, prepare people and provide people the opportunity to be ready to go back into the working world. So, does anybody have any questions, concerns that I can try to answer at this time?
Any questions for Dave?
Again, I look forward to meeting all of you.
Yeah, welcome. Thank you very much. And, once we get back to some semblance of normal, I'm sure we'll be in much more regular contact.
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right, director's report, your show, Dan.
All right. So I want to kind of second something Dave just said. His first day on the job was literally the first day that all staff across all programs were remote. So his first day on the job was actually probably the first day on the job of the new jobs for everybody's staff. So it's been an interesting month. Couple of quick things. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Can I just say really quickly, and I forgot to mention, I want to commend my staff for, and all the CSS staff for being so flexible and being able to adapt so quickly to a totally different environment. They've done a great job. So I want to commend them.
Thanks. So a couple of things, quick policy updates, and I'm going to kind of share my screen on them so that we can do this. All right, so demand occupation list. Ernie earlier mentioned that we needed to look at our demand occupation list. This has been a project that we've kind of bounced off exec for a few months. This is a major shift, so I want folks to really kind of understand this. If you remember our old demand occupation list, it was somewhat confusing because it didn't really even necessarily talk about occupations. It almost was like demand courses or demand degrees. So really to shift to a demand occupation list, what we did was, so if you look at what I've shared on my screen, local demand occupation, we still have level 1, level 2, level 3. But instead of saying this particular training. What we've actually done is we have tied to the ONET code 31-1014.00, the CNA home health aide, which would also include such other occupations that are often called to as certified medication aides, certified nurse. You can read them there. All right. So what we're trying to do is tie back directly to an ONET code. That will tie seamlessly from a paperwork process back to some of the paperwork intake documentation we have, but it will also open up. So someone doesn't have to come in and say, you know what, I really wanted to be a nursing assistant, but all you had on there was a CNA home health aide. Well, the reality is a nursing assistant really falls under this category of the 31-1014.00. And so this should open up a much broader vision of the types of occupations and job titles that we're looking at our need in the area. So kind of carrying that forward. So you see construction equipment operator. So before we had like forklift or something heavy equipment, really what we're looking for is occupations that fall in the 47-203.00 category of ONET, and you see a broader listing of them. The same way with general automotive services technician, the 49-3023. We did ask add a descriptor in here to kind of give people, you know, if they go somewhere and they're looking at a different job title, because ONET didn't actually list other job titles, so we kind of put a descriptor below it. So the level 2 training programs, commercial and industrial electrician. So the 49-2094, and you see a whole bunch of different job titles and career titles in there. What you also see is up here, you see in level 1, the general automotive services tech. What you see in level 2 is an automotive service technicians and mechanics, which is the 49-3023.01. This is a higher level of training. So what we've got built in here now in this new listing is for those folks who really, you know, have the interest and aptitudes and desire to kind of be that level 1, we have opportunities to train there. But in certain categories, we'll jump up and grab a higher level category as well. Computer aided mechanical drafting. You see a whole bunch of different categories tying it to the ONET code. HVAC is an area that we have really expanded because just by adopting the new code. Welding, the same thing there. Industrial maintenance. We've got a couple of new ones around medical secretary. I think we had medical coding and billing before. So that now is really into the medical secretary ONET code 436013. So you see different varieties there. Some of our folks in the area, obviously the CDL combined AB is our preferred, but we do have some folks who just want or need the B to go to their dream employer. So we've kind of broken that out, and they are 2 different codes within ONET. Culinary arts, you see we've kind of, we've got a pretty big demand in this realm for folks within this ONET code. So this is a new area that we're looking to expand into. The LPNs, we're really looking at the Pell applicable ONET code, which is 29-2061, but you can see different codes on that. You see medical coding and billing separated out with a distinct ONET code as compared to the earlier one. Precision and advanced machining ONET code really gives us a wide berth there. Cosmetology, it's really, again, an ONET code. Social and human service assistance. This really does widen up some of those other community coordinators, family support workers, outreach specialists, and mental health technicians. So that's a whole career field. Career childcare workers continues. Dental assistant is a new one, so you can see there, and we're recommending that code. Medical equipment preparers. This is actually the name of the occupational code, and we've had some requests by local training providers for central service techs and things of that nature, and that really falls under this. So this one in particular is an example of where we, by using the ONET code, we're not limiting ourselves to just a central service technician demand occupation. We're actually opening it up to this entire category of workers. So whatever needs the local health systems would need, we're better able to meet their long-term. Pharmacy technician, same thing. It's actually a returning occupation. Level 3 is another big change here. down here, we used to list actually degrees. So an associate's degree in this, an associate's degree in that. Again, going back to that, this is an occupational list, and we've tied them to ONET codes. So you can see, I think the resulting expansion actually makes it a much broader, and it should be much more easily interpreted by our customers out on the floor. And so I'm not going to go through all these with you. I'll let you do it. But the net result is this is a lot of work that it really will do a couple of things. One, it should make it easier for the world to kind of know what we're looking for. It should broaden it out. It ties all the paperwork together with the ONET codes, which are on all of the eligibility documentation. And because of all the extra codes, it opens it up tremendously.
So Dan,
yes.
I have a question. So do you, with what's going on with COVID, do you anticipate that there'll be, say maybe in the medical services one, I can't remember what it was called, but do you anticipate that there's going to be a demand, a much higher demand for workers that can do testing sort of on a job site based on COVID? Or, and I guess that's my question, are you taking that into account? And do we anticipate getting sort of a rush of applicants?
So, well, you got a couple of questions there, good ones. So time frame, this list was prepared probably 6 weeks ago. This was almost finalized when the executive orders of 50%, 75%, 100%, and all that fun stuff was really kicking in. So this does not necessarily encompass all of the potentially new careers that are going to be spawned by the last few weeks of reality. That being said, I think using the ONET codes of like medical secretary, the broader code of like LPN, the medical coding, things of that nature, I think we're going to have the ability to flex a little bit more, because unless there's an existing ONET code out there specifically for people testing for COMED in parking lots, they're probably going to get lumped into this broader medical coding billing 29-2071, at least initially. And then we can kind of refine as ONET codes are added and adjusted longer term. As far as a rush of people, I would love to say yes, there'll be a rush of people. History over the last few years tells me that we may not necessarily see a rush. And that's unfortunate, and in some cases heartbreaking for me. What I can say is that our local training providers, other training providers are rapidly building online and virtual training capabilities. I think as they add those capabilities, I think we'll be able to take advantage and kind of position ourselves for a rush. Ernie's, expanding of his ITA review committee, I think is going to be a good strategic move in case there is a rush. I suspect there is going to be a massive funding in this stimulus V4. I know we're just getting V3.5, but I think we're going to get a V4, and I think there's going to be a massive influx of WIOA training money there. Which will dwarf, even for those of you that remember the ARRA stimulus days, the numbers they're talking in this round are quadruple those numbers. So I think there's going to be funds. So we're building internal capabilities to scale, and that's the best, longest answer I can give you, Judy.
No, that's okay. I only ask that because I do think that there are a fair number of employers, and this isn't me speaking, it's actually coming out of an IDA group that convenes, but there's a fair number of, there's a fair amount of concern that a lot of employers are going to realize now that they have either one, furloughed, or two, put their workers on remote work, that they realize in many cases they had some extra fat in the system. And so they won't be coming back. And so and so I'm trying to figure out, I guess what I'm sharing is there a way for us to sort of anticipate that and maybe even have a system in place to sort of welcome those that are not brought back, or those that quite frankly, their business isn't going to happen this summer because we're heading into May, and depending on what happens with recovery, there may not be enough work for some of these seasonal workers.
Sure.
So
I what I would say to that is we are very rapidly building structures, scalability structures in particular within our system. So you're going to see electronic signatures. You're going to see some new online learnings in the eligible training provider list motion that's coming up. I'm going to talk further down. The last item on the agenda for the day is digital transformation of our system, or virtualization, whatever phrase we want to call it. We are already moving in that direction. History tells me, and I in conversations with staff and other programs and other workforce boards, they kind of inform us that the reality of the need for the job transition is going to occur late in the process for most people out there. So if you are on unemployment, traditionally speaking, and you get 26 weeks of unemployment, you don't begin feeling the pressure of, holy crap, I need a job, until week 22, 24, 25 of that 26. In this particular case, we've got additional layers. We've got this $600 a week monster out there, which is certainly going to incentivize people a good chunk of people to kind of hang out until at least that $600 is done. Plus, there are UI extensions out there, which kind of pushes it forward. We felt that under the ARRA stimulus. We are beginning, Rayanne, I've kind of challenged her with putting together some data sets around actives and seeing if we can go back in time periods with the data we have and create some forecasting models. But we are not necessarily statisticians by trade. So we're going to get the best data we can and try and build forward-looking stuff. But we're really building forward-looking stuff kind of from the ground up. What my focus has been on with the team is trying to create structures that are scalable. Once we have virtual workshops, virtual trainings, virtual intake processes with electronic signature and all that fun stuff, then really it's the scalability is just how many people can get on my website at a time, which is kind of what happened to the UI website. They found their scalability maximum and painfully so. That really is going to really be our exercise potentially on the far end of this. Does that kind of answer your question?
it does. Thank you. Thank you very much.
And
Dan-
Judy, this is Jeannie Ashback, and I will just say that Dan met with both Tim and I to talk to us about this. And from the college perspective, we are doing basically the same thing that Dan is doing. We are scaling up. We are creating accelerated programming. We're looking at how we can deliver things differently. But again, I would agree with Dan that we're nervous that we can build it, but I'm not sure that people are going to be ready to come. Until they begin to feel that pain, as Dan said. That has been the way it's worked in the past, and with the extra $600 a week, I don't see that will change quickly.
This is Jamie, and I would agree with that. And I think this extra $600 is creating an interesting dichotomy because, we're hearing businesses now at all levels, from pizza shops on up to our manufacturers, saying that they can't get their employees to come back. So as we look to reopen the economy, which seems to be the direction we're beginning to head in, we're going to have this short-term impact of businesses not being able to find employees because employees are choosing to sit on the sideline. And then all of a sudden, so we'll have to react to that, but then we're going to, have to react on an even larger scale when these individuals that have been sitting on the sidelines, realize that their benefit is running out. And, by that time, the assumption, is that businesses are going to have ramped back up to a point where they know what they're going to need. And I agree with Dan. I don't think it's going to be on the level that we had previously seen. I think, businesses are not going to need as many employees in the short term. And, long term, everybody's leaner and meaner and figuring out how to do more with less. So, I do think we're going to have that challenge later on this year as the benefits run out. But, short term, businesses are having a real hard time getting their employees to come back as they ramp back up. And that's becoming a challenge right now.
Yeah.
Yep. So,
Hey, Dan,
I guess, yes.
Can you briefly scroll up to the level 2 heading?
Yeah, we expanded that to 18 from 12. So yeah, I missed that
Okay.
one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, the other thing I was going to ask, Dan, is are you, and I'm thinking about what Jamie just said about the workers not coming back. Is your team pushing the shared work program, the DOL shared work program?
Are we pushing it?
Yeah. And I say that, well, I wouldn't say pushing, it's probably the wrong word, but you know, this idea that instead of having your employees really leave the work site, leave the work site and go on to full unemployment, keeping them on in a, 20%, 25% capacity, and then having the other 75 picked up by UI, right? So the idea is that they don't necessarily leave, and in fact, they come back. And then they're on the payroll. They don't really ever sit at home. I just don't know whether or not, I mean, you wouldn't talk to them anyway.
So I will tell you, so I would talk to the business, not the employee side. And that's really kind of where we're if we're pushing, to use kind of that word, if we're pushing, it's really on the business side of the house. So as our team is calling local businesses and engaging with them, if there are cues around, I don't need these people full time or something, and we see opportunities, we are advising people about the shared work program. We are offering the potential to strategically use both. So if you have, and you can move back to a 40% or a 25% or something like that capacity,
right,
and let your employees collect the 600 on top of that, right, and you realize if you save a few dollars savings net overall,
that's
you
right,
could have happy employees because they're maximizing their money. You could get just the amount of workers that you need, and you've got happy people. So are we doing that? Absolutely.
Okay.
Our business is savvy enough. I will tell you, in the early stages of this, it was really the however many stages of grief for most businesses that we spoke to. And now we're trying to get them to kind of vision that way. I've mentioned it in I'm on a number of different calls that, if a business is not looking at strategically integrating the shared work program with their employment needs, I think they're doing themselves a disservice. That's kind of my messaging out there, and that's how we're using it.
Okay.
But pushing it is probably
well,
not.
You know why I bring that up? Because this is a great way. I mean, right now when you have downtime like this, I know I'm doing this with my staff. I mean, this is where I'm pushing online education to them. Like, so this is an opportunity for them to upskill their staff when they actually have the ability to not necessarily be in full production, and literally getting them what they need to be upskilled for coming back. I think that's where I'm thinking is upskilling, using what we have, and at the same time, the training programs, and then of course the employer has them in a shared work scenario, right? So that they're paying them to train, but it's going to pay off in the long run. I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud as I'm asking you these questions.
That's exactly, Judy, this is Jeannie. That's exactly what we're that's our messaging to all employers right now is, use this time to increase the skills of your people. We'll help you find the funding for it.
Perfect. Yep. Thank you.
Anecdotally, this is Nancy. I was on the AM&T board call earlier this week, and several large manufacturers who sit on the board are using shared work very successfully and saying their employees are very happy with it. So it is being used, but it definitely is worthwhile to get the word out to many more employers.
Hey Nancy, are they local manufacturers, or are they manufacturers in other parts of the state?
They're in Broome County.
Okay. They're regional. Okay.
Yeah.
Excuse me, this is Lynn with WDI. Can I interject something here?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so WDI, in case there's anyone that doesn't know us, Workforce Development Institute. We're a state not-for-profit tasked with assisting workforce and economic development across the state. Due to the COVID emergency, we've taken a focus on recovery and supportive type activity. So as we're all interacting with employers and industry, if there is something specific that would help a company get back on their rails that they need to do with COVID criteria, whether it's workplace spacing, There's been a couple of different areas. We could potentially be a funding resource as well as other resources. So please keep us in mind for that as well.
Well, Lynn, you know I send people to you, so thank you. And thanks for being on the call.
Thank you.
Okay. So in terms of motion and process, because we're at an hour and we're going to obviously extend beyond that a little bit here. Demand occupation list. What I really would like to see in a perfect world would be a motion by the board to accept this new structure with kind of the shift to the ONET code methodology. And also, we probably should highlight that the level 2 funding programming, we moved from 12 to 18 months to better accommodate some of these broadened careers within that particular category.
Yeah, I think it goes by. Okay, can we get a motion to this effect, please?
Judy motions.
Ernie seconds.
Okay, motion second. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. All right, Dan.
All right, eligible training provider list. I just want to bounce back to that realm.
This is Jeannie.
We've had-
Do you need me to step out of the call because I'm recusing myself, or just not vote?
I'm trying to think what. Oh, you got a bunch of them on here. Walk away. Go fill your cup of coffee.
Okay.
Unless and unless someone else has a stronger feeling on that. All right. So our eligible training provider list, as you can see, we have a lot of requests for additional courses on here. Some of this is just new time periods for them, but you see some new career codes in here. So you see manufacturing technology degrees. You see some different things I think that are going to fit nicely in the broader methodology. These are all Corning Community College additions on here. The vast majority of them will line up with our funding. So Corning has been a long-term good training provider. I see nothing from the quality assurance side of the house that would preclude us from adding them. And so from a staff recommendation, I would recommend that we approve these additions. And I would need a motion accordingly.
Jamie, I'll make a motion.
I'll make Bill Cottle second.
Okay, motion second. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
All right. Jeannie abstained. Actually, so.
Oh, you know what? I have to abstain. Thank you. I have to abstain as well.
Oh, you're on the board, correct? Yep. Okay. So let's see. So the next is Youth Objective Assessment, a policy update. We have been encouraged by our friends at the Department of Labor to update our objective assessment methodology. We've added some additional categories, in this area here, and this area here. Really, it's fine tuning. There's nothing material here. It's really just fine tuning and broadening the measurement sources for the various objective assessments. So I would, we could certainly field questions on this, but otherwise, this is actually probably the biggest area. So we're, from a skill level perspective, we're using ONED, we're using job zones, career zones, work history, and resumes.
So Bill Cottle, motion to accept.
We got a motion. Do we have a second?
Benny O.C. to Marshall. Hi, Sharon.
Second.
Okay.
Yeah.
Motion.
I'm sorry, I
Motion.
didn't get who was second.
Tim.
Tim, thank you.
Okay, motion and second. Any questions? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Carried.
All right, thank you. Another youth program specific upgrade, Department of Labor. So for those of you that remember, a couple of years ago, we had a very, very intensive finding by our friends at the Department of Labor when they monitored us programmatically. And we had to very carefully write a policy which had youth occupational ITA training and non-ITA training. That was a different Department of Labor monitor. The new monitor doesn't particularly care for that. And so he has very much coached us to realign and reclarify and really call this just one category, youth occupational skills training policy for WIOA funds. All we've really done here is tied clearly to the final regs and rules on things. We've clarified and reorganized our training provider requirements this way. There's nothing materially different other than we removed any reference to an ITA or a non-ITA type of training. Now they are just occupational skills trainings. And that's really the other changes right in here. Training candidates presented to the ITA committee can be considered in funding. For others, the non-ITA type of categories that are not on lists that Ernie and his team would be reviewing, those trainings can be approved by the executive director or designee. So my designee will be Phyllis Ballier as my deputy director, because we're all aware on the call here that we have that firewall. So I would effectively kind of be that backup, and Phyllis would be the lead designee in that area. But if we just say deputy director, it doesn't give us the flexibility of me kind of covering when she's on vacation or in extreme circumstances. That's probably the closest thing to a material change in this policy out there.
Okay. Anyone have any questions? Our numbers. Not, can I get a motion, please? Some other agencies that haven't been doing that type of stuff. So.
Bill Caudle, motion to accept.
Ernie, second.
Okay. Any questions? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Yeah. Carried.
Excellent. Thank you, everybody. So this is really the highlight of the dramatic changes that we have gone through over the last 4 weeks. So some of you on the Operations and Oversight will remember a meeting which the Operations and Oversight Committee in, I think it was like December, November timeframe, wanted to shift our entire structure to really remote enrollments, digital signatures, web-based interfaces so people could get there. And as you recall in that meeting, I told you that we would get as far as we could, but that, barring some sort of a craziness thing type happening, I didn't see Department of Labor giving up on wet signatures. I think COVID qualifies as that kind of major disruptor. So when that hit, we strategically as a staff went head first. We wanted to open up everything that we could to an electronic signature process, kind of using COVID changes and necessities to help us down that road. So we started having and requesting permissions on different places and getting clarifications. So Rayanne on the quality assurance team and myself really were kind of the 1-2 force there. I will tell you, initially, Department of Labor was very receptive on the program side of the house. So looking at eligibility documentation, intake documentation, they were actually pretty receptive to that. They on the fiscal side of the house, however, they were a little more I'm going to use the word reluctant. And so I did push very, very hard. And we finally ultimately did get permissions from Julie Keating, who's the head of the QA and whatnot folks, the monitoring photo team in Albany, to kind of, with certain parameters, within certain parameters, open up both program and fiscal. So we have drafted up a policy here. It's really, so effective April 1st of this year, we can use electronic signatures for CSS Workforce New York approved and initiated documents. So if I need to do an enrollment in an ITA and that intake packet, I can do that. I can do on the fiscal sides, vendor or other agency initiated documents. If the funder allows for different grants, we can also do it that way as well. Types of documents that we can do electronic signature on: personnel documents, so the employee onboarding documentation, time off requests, etc. Fiscal, vendor agreements and contracts. All of our program documents for adult, dislocated, and youth programs. That's applications, intake, eligibility, data validation, attestation, registration forms, case management, program forms. We really have forced the door wide open on this front. And I will tell you that our team, and when I say our team, it's not just the the CSS staff directly, it's also the contracted workplace team as well. We are fully at this moment in time digitalized on this. Every single document across all of our programs, we can now deliver this way. So when customers are calling the centers, we are able to provide the counseling, the intake, the eligibility, all those fun things. We can shoot the information out, obtain the document signatures, and move them forward without ever actually physically being in the same space as that individual. I will tell you, well, let me go next. Business services, customized trainings, OJT, contracts, related contract implementation, execution documents, yada, yada, yada. We are able to do that. Now, the only caveat I'll put is, because we haven't done a lot of these yet, we may be a little slow and we may feel a little bumbling along the way as kind of staff become comfortable with this, but there's no legal reason why we can't do those things. And so we are moving very, very rapidly ahead. I will tell you, we are out in front of most. I'm not going to say all at this point because I know some other areas have kind of taken the door that we were able to push open and have begun applying it. But I will very confidently tell you that we were probably the first in the state to receive the permissions, and we kind of forced that door open specific to our needs. We then shared that email verification with our workforce board director networks, and I know other areas are working on it. But we pushed very hard to do this, and we are out on the front, and we are doing this. So this will go a long ways to going.
Yeah, that's awesome. It is awesome. And I want to give you some great, like 3 stars. This is amazing. And I really, on behalf of the O&O committee, really appreciate you taking the bull by the horns and making this happen. Really. Thank you.
Thank you. And I will tell you that on my team, my emerging workforce team, which works with young people, I'll tell you, they even got ahead of me in some cases. I've been kind of that front saying, we're going to do this. And then I had one moment of almost saying, do we want to go that far? And my youth program lead reminded me that, hell no, he won't go backwards. And he kind of reinvigorated me. So I think the team as a whole is also pushing on this front and doing a lot of work to redesign it. So this is a huge staff accomplishment. And please know as a board that you are one of the first boards in New York State that has this board policy approved and this level of integration. So
you need a motion.
You accept this.
Yep, you need a motion for this, right? So I'll make the motion that we accept this policy.
This is Nancy. I'll second it.
Okay, motion and second. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Carried.
All right. So website. So another area that both operations and oversight and exec committee, interestingly enough, Judy serves on both of those, really pushed us to redesign our website. Thank you, Judy. The procurement process has been completed. We reached out to 4 local areas. We tried to stay with local web designers so that we could support our local economy. We sent to 4. Sharkey Designs, a small startup in the area, gave us a quote. Scope Design gave us a quote. Orlando Web Services didn't feel they had enough information to possibly estimate the project. Thirsty Fish wanted to, but they were able to kind of meet by the deadline. So that being said, because of the cost that Sharkey Designs, if you accept that $4,500 price, because it's under the threshold, Patty on the finance team feels she can very much defend just going forward with the 2 quotes. If we don't go with that and we move the scope design, the hiccup will be that we would need to step out to probably obtain a 3rd quote somewhere or maybe reopen it entirely. So I will kind of field discussions on this. Basically, it's taking exists in terms of scope of work. Let me see if it's on here. So scope of work, phase 1, really is content creation based on current website copy. So our structure will look
yeah. So Dan, is a couple questions. One is, does the 4,500 include all 3 phases or just phase 1?
All 3 phases.
Okay, and then the second one is because. I'm just going to say this, if they're only, 4,500 is the right price, literally, if all they're doing is taking your existing website and just sort of updating what it looks like and throwing it all onto a new WordPress or whatever they're using. 4,500 is really quite generous for that because it doesn't take that much time. So I think that that's a good price. And if that's what you're doing, and if the ADA piece, same thing. That is not a difficult thing to do. It cost me, I don't know, a couple $100 to make it ADA compliant. In your case, it has to be a little bit more because there's different levels of ADA. So you want to be really, my point of saying this is I think you just have to be really clear about what your expectations are of this contractor. So I am supportive of you, and I trust that you'll manage this, but I just want to make sure that at the end of the day, we get a website that really has the functionality and the ability that you don't have to scrap it later to put in the additional functionality going forward.
Yeah, I would jump in there with Judy, and I know it, like she said, if you're just redesigning the site and putting it into a new portal, this price sounds great, but I would make sure that you and staff really take a hard look at the functionality and the future functionality you want to build, because I know, for example, with IDAs, as we've had to move to live streaming and other types of mechanisms, we've had to build and add functionality to our websites. And, sometimes that becomes complicated if you don't put the pieces in place up front. In addition, I know you don't want to look at that hosting thing right now, but we have a situation where we've actually got a separate designer and a separate host. And sometimes that gets a little complicated, especially when you go to change that functionality, because you've got to go to the designer who then has to coordinate with the host, and it gets, a little touchy. So those are just a couple of things that I think, from a staffing standpoint, you want to make sure you understand completely before you go with a Sharkey design versus somebody else, just simply because of cost.
Right. Yes. So everything in the Q&As and in the conversation with the folks that were doing this, we've told them that really this is a transition to get us to a current, usable, modern interface. And we cannot go to a platform that is not scalable, because we are going hardcore forward on electronic capabilities and using this as really a portal for customers to access. And so in both the Sharkey and the Scope design, there has been cognition on their part that the format and the platform has to be scaled for future stuff. Really for us, because we absolutely need this done right now, you see work to be completed by June 30th. So that really the key rate in first step here is to get us to a platform that is scalable in the future. As far as the hosting, I will tell you that both Sharky and Scope are willing to host, and I believe me, right now I have a host in one location, and well, I don't even have a real a design team, which is a even bigger problem. But I have operated where I have the host and the site designer in different areas, and it is a nightmare. Both Sharky and Scope. Sharky in particular has given us additional quote for hosting of $500 a year. We're currently paying $600 a year for hosting. That being said, I just paid for another year, so I want to see if there's any ability to kind of salvage some of that $600 before I just abandon it and incur another $500 cost. That's really my only hesitation in splitting them out.
Dan, this is Jeannie Ashbach. We've just been doing some work with Sharky Designs too, and I will just say that Brent has been extremely receptive to changes that we needed to make. He's delivered things on time. He's done what we've asked him to do. So now it wasn't website stuff, but I find him very responsive.
Yeah. We've had him do some video work for us as well as some other marketing material type of work, and in both of those cases, we gave him some real easy stuff on the front end. He did an excellent job. We gave him kind of next level easy stuff, and he did a really, really good job there as well. This would be a kind of a next level project for him, but I'm past performance does not guarantee future performance, but
true. But
yeah. So in a perfect world, folks would say, yes, please initiate the contract and redesign the website and go forth. Damn the torpedoes, full steam ahead.
do you need a motion? I'll make a motion that we move forward. We've talked about this website for what, 3, 4, 5 years? So I will make a motion that we move forward with website redesign and engage Sharky Designs.
I'll second it. This is Judy. I'll second it. This is we need to get this going. And thank you, Dan, for doing this.
I'm sorry it took so long, folks. I really I am. So any discussion? So we have a first and a second out there. Discussion. Hearing no discussion, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Anyone opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Excellent. Thank you.
Dan, I just have one comment for the rest of the group because Brent has told me I can share this. Brent is a graduate of our co-starters class, the first class, and so he's been part of our Incubator Works entrepreneurial group, and he came into it because he was a member of the SEAP, which is the Department of Labor program to help people on unemployment become an entrepreneur. So it's a really great example of the different partners working together with DOL and with Incubator Works. And it's great to hear good feedback. Brent is one of our star graduates.
Awesome.
Good. Excellent. So we are way over time, and I wanted to have a system digital reorganization conversation. Some of the categories I've already shared on this. We are ramping up across the board from a staffing level, from everything simultaneously and in parallel. We are ramping up social media presence and marketing. Well, we're not allowed to market. Outreach. We are doing physical outreach to businesses and customers and trying to bring that feedback in. We are designing localized, and really it's an intentional localized organic feel that we're trying to create. In terms of electronic stuff, there is a lot more video, a lot more digital type of materials that are being built. Now with electronic signatures, we're actually designing. You're going to be able to learn how to write an OJT contract if you're a business, or a customized, or an ITA. You're going to be able to have videos and walk through online, in addition to customer service. We are fully digitalizing across the board everything that we do. We are long-term visioning in our system where our website becomes and serves really as that greeter function. So if you've ever been to one of our career centers, that greeter person that you bump into, really our website long-term will be kind of that greeter thing. Our Career Center staff are adjusting to the reality that the jobs they left on March 19th or whatever that Friday was, 20th, are not the jobs they're going back to. Now, whether that's a 5% change, 20% change, 90% change, we're still feeling our way on that. But the staff are coming to a very intentional understanding of that, and we're creating scalable formats across the board, and that is our focus. So strategically speaking, I know we've kind of dabbled in this a little bit throughout this call. From a board, is there any areas that you as a board you want us to be particularly cognizant of or accelerate this before that? I'm really looking for any guidance, input, suggestions. All of the staff are listening as guests on this. I intentionally had them all listen in so that they could hear, and it wasn't just big bad Dan saying we need to digitalize. I think I've reiterated a couple times on this that this is really has been a long-term board push. So I wanted them to kind of hear from, and thank you that all of you that kind of brought that up about the longstanding need and desire to do this, because that reinforces it. But bottom line, what do you want us to do? What do you want us to prioritize? We need some additional strategic guidance. And with that, I've opened up Pandora's box, perhaps, but please throw it on the table while we're designing.
Dan, I would just, this is Judy. I would just, I think it's hard to have this conversation because it's sort of, you're right, it's just sort of this blank screen for us to sort of throw things up against. And it might be more helpful for us if we're going to have this as a interactive discussion. It might be helpful to have the staff perhaps sort of do a straw man that allows us to respond and brainstorm and then think about it. I don't know. That's just it's difficult for me to sort of say, oh, here's some ideas. I'm much better if I can look at something and hitchhike to the next idea.
I think this is Jeannie Ashback. I think Judy's point is well taken, but I also would like to, and we have customer feedback on some of the report. It would be really good to take some of that customer feedback and maybe even do some kind of digital focus group with customers to say what would have been easier for you, because we know that we were gaining momentum on evening and weekend appointments at the career centers for folks. So we know that not everybody can make the career centers between 8:30 and 4:30. So this is an opportunity to expand our customer base. And how can we do that? So it would be great if we could also do some kind of a little, focus group with customers to say what would make it easier for you.
That's awesome. That is a great idea.
Yep. So Jeannie, just so you're aware along that front, I've begun the very cautious thinking about if our center truly is impacted by COVID and we can now do this literally 24/7, 365, how do we support that with that quality staff engagement? So right now, 6-8 weeks ago, the model was, Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 4:30, come to a career center, you could see a real person. If you're in Elmira, you could get a couple nights or, a Saturday shift. Long term, we're beginning to look at, do we need to, from our website perspective, have maybe that chat function where you actually have staff from maybe 8 a.m. until 10 p.m. 7 days a week, and we begin looking at staffing from a virtual support perspective along that model. I don't know what folks' thoughts are on that.
It's funny. I just had this conversation with our admissions team yesterday. We're doing the same thing at SUNY Corning, Community College. This is Jeannie again. So yeah, I think this has allowed us to see where our holes are and how can we fill them differently and more effectively, without burning out our staff, I might add.
Absolutely. And that's kind of why we're being very cautious into this, is that, that is a whole new realm of staff engagement when we're talking that many hours. Okay. Well, let's rethink this, and it's late in the day, and we've been an hour and a half on an hour-long meeting, so I apologize for going way over. Thank you for getting all this work done. Look forward to additional conversations and meetings. Jack, are you still on, or were you had to step away? I think I saw him step away. So Mike, maybe you would step and maybe do an adjournment. If not, I will.
Mike stepped away too.
Oh boy, it's a stupid. Okay. So I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So
Hey,
moved.
first.
This is Judy. I'll move we
I'll
adjourn.
second it, Tim.
Thanks, Tim.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Thank you, everybody. I really appreciate your time and energy.
Yep. Stay well. Be safe.